Welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well and that you've had a great week in franchising. I've had an interesting week. I've actually been away on holiday. So I've been out of franchising for a little bit, but it's always up here. It's always under the hat. I've been away in Portugal attempting to play golf. But it's lovely to be back and it's lovely to be doing one of these and hopefully talking to all of you and hearing about your week in franchising. So where do we always start? We always start by explaining what this show is all about, what the premise is. So the Franchise Show is, as you can imagine, about franchising. It's no surprise by its name, but it's about if you're a franchisee, if you're a franchisor, if you're an entrepreneur, then this is designed to show you the world of franchising and inspire thought and questions. It's not necessarily about answering those questions. It's about thinking about what questions you might want to ask. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking at a way to grow your business and you're considering franchising, then these conversations hopefully should add value to you. If you're a franchisee and you're thinking, I'd like to start my own business using franchising as the basis for that, again, these conversations will hopefully inspire you to ask questions. And if you're a franchisor, then hopefully you can learn by the fantastic people that we have on this show. So each week we take a different topic and we have a lovely guest. And today is absolutely no exception to that. We certainly have a lovely guest. So the topic today is protecting aspiring franchisees, which is a lovely topic. That's so important to make sure, what you want is happy, successful franchisees and people who are aspiring to that. You want to protect them on that journey, because it's a journey full of ups and downs. So it's a great topic. So I'd like to introduce you, and I'm sure most of you know, we have the Franchise King on the Franchise Show. I mean, it's amazing. I'm so delighted to welcome Joe Libava to the show, aka the Franchise King. Joel, welcome to the Franchise Show. It's an absolute honor to have you as a guest. Perhaps you could start by explaining a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into franchising and why protecting franchisees is so important to you.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Harvey. I got into franchising almost 24 years ago, and it's because of my late father, Jerry. He was one of the first franchise brokers in the country, and he joined a franchise brokerage group. I was in franchise automobile in the business. I was in management. Before that, I did a lot of other stuff, a lot of restaurant business work. I was on the radio. But the end of my career was when I was fired. I was fired at this franchise dealership. And although I was taken by surprise and it was scary, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. This weight was lifted off my shoulder because it was a miserable experience. And I was definitely not my best self. It was at that point when I was walking out of the dealership with my little briefcase and my daughter's car seat, because she was an infant at the time, that I said, never again. I never want to feel like I'm not in control of my career ever again. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew what I didn't want to do, and that was work for someone else. I didn't know how to get there. And that's where my late father, Jerry, came in. He said, why don't you join me? I'm like, I know a little about franchising, but more of the management, the management side, managing a franchise business. And he said, you can do this. You're a good public speaker. You're outgoing. You're a good sales guy. So he hammered on me for a couple of months. And finally I said, okay. So I went to training, got trained by one of the best. The guy's name is Howard Bassick. And I learned franchising and I became a broker. It wasn't on my bingo card, as you can say, but I became a broker, was fairly successful for a few years. Then something happened. I was helping people get in business, and I was making back then $12,000 commissions as a broker, $15,000, and it felt great. Money was good, but a few of the people I was getting into business were going out of business, and I was like, yeah, I don't like this. That and a combination of what this franchise brokerage group was doing internally convinced me to at least go on my own as a franchise broker for a while. But even that, it just really didn't work out that well. People I was working with were still kind of not being real successful as franchisees. So I said, I just don't want to do this anymore. So I'm going to do something crazy and charge people for the expertise that I have. So that's what I do now. I work with people one-on-one who want to buy a franchise, who don't necessarily want a franchise matchmaker, but they want to make sure that they're on the right track. So people come to me, either they have a couple franchises they're looking at and they want help figuring out which one is the best for them, or they come to me at the beginning and it's just like, help me, Joel, step by step through this process. Let's bring a few franchises together and help me out. So that's what I do. Turned into a book deal about 10, 11 years ago with Wiley Publishing. They wanted a new franchise book, so I did that. And I also wrote another book on how to research a franchise. I also do some franchise marketing, some for emerging brands and some for brands that have been around a little while. I'm very picky. I take on a couple projects a year. And I have the longest running blog in franchising, the Franchise King blog. I do some SEO, I do content marketing, article marketing for franchisors, some social media stuff. So I do it all. The question is going to be asked, why have you named yourself the Franchise King? First, let's get that out of the way. I didn't name myself the Franchise King. My ego is not that big. I was at a local chamber of commerce event, and it was a conference, a big one, like an expo. And from across the room, as I walked in, someone said, "Hey, it's the Franchise King." And I looked around and I immediately told a friend of mine, Jim Kukral in Cleveland, about it. He said, "Dude, you got to trademark that thing. It's awesome." So I trademarked it, and the rest is history. So
I don't know what you mean, Joel, about having some sort of trademark. I
know.
Don't understand. Especially involving a hat.
Yeah.
It's odd, isn't it? But
the difference between you and me is that I won't wear the crown because I look like an absolute idiot. You wear a hat.
I've powered through.
You can get away with it. So anyway, it's in the background, but and there's a crown on my website. It's part of the logo, and that's what you get.
Fantastic. Look, before we continue the conversation, I want to just recognize a few people who have joined us early on today. So we have the wonderful Bob. Great to have you here, Bob. Bob is a regular on the show. Really looking forward to hearing your thoughts about protecting aspiring franchisees, and what it means when you're on that sort of upward path and you've got that success in your mind and you want to make sure that you are protected and that, all of those ups and downs don't spoil that. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We have Tim Morris here. Great to have you here, Tim. Tim is going to be our guest next week. And he's going to be talking about high performing franchisees. So that's going to be a great conversation as well. When you're on that journey and you're aspiring, and then when you've made it and you're performing, both need equal protection and support. So it's going to be a great conversation. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Tim. We have the wonderful Nick here, Nick Pleven. And look, you know what I'm going to do, Nick? Because it's you and because you're one of our lovely sponsors, I'm going to change it to that. So that is Nick's wonderful company, eTalent, great software for getting people into positions and helping you use psychometrics to analyze people when they're coming into your network. Great to add that into the mix with some human things as well. So who else have we got? We've got the wonderful Penny Hopkinson, and she's written a lovely book. Now, as you can see, I'm not in my normal Harry Potter-esque under the stairs office today. I'm at my office in London. So I haven't got your book with me, Penny, but it's Manual Magic. And you need to check that out if you're looking at writing a manual. So who else have we got? We've got a LinkedIn user here. Let us know who this is, but The LinkedIn user has put, Joel's book, How to Become a Franchise Owner, is absolutely fantastic. Very practical, useful, and realistic. Well, look at that. A compliment early doors there for you there, Joel.
Must be from a family member.
Did you
kind of on the down low.
Absolutely. We have the wonderful and the ever wise Simon Wise. Great to have you here, Simon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on protecting aspiring franchisees. And finally, we've got Nick again, and he's put, woohoo! Great. Look, I'm going to leave that one up there for a moment because that's a nice one to big you up. There, Joel. You've mentioned a few things there, and there was a few things that were on your LinkedIn page and that we've discussed before that I think are really interesting. You talk about an honest, practical approach and empowering people. How important and where does that sort of honest, straightforward approach sit when you're protecting aspiring franchisees?
For me, it is telling prospective franchisees that franchising is great, but that it's not perfect. And that there's no such thing as instant success. And it's especially true if you're coming from corporate America or corporate UK, where you've had a job with steady income. And a lot of people don't realize that it's not going to be instant income when they become a franchise owner. It's going to take months, maybe a year or more before they start making money in most cases. And I always tell people that, not only financially do you need to make sure you have a good nest egg for your living expenses, et cetera, and for your operating expenses as you go, but you need to be able to psychologically deal with not having income coming in. It's going to be strange to not have a paycheck. It's okay. So I tell my clients that you must look at franchise ownership as a long-term thing. It's not a short-term play. It's not an immediate income replacement. And I think that's part of just being realistic on a human level. It's not perfect. Franchising is great, but please be patient as you grow your business.
That's some really good advice. And I think on the income front, it's so important to be realistic about that. And when you start any business, you've suddenly got to get used to the fact that that paycheck doesn't come in, that money doesn't come in. As an employee, you're in a privileged position where each month, no matter what happens, you get that paycheck. And whatever business you run, you don't. And it can be scary. It can be terrifying. Yes, of course, with a franchise, you've got the support of a structure of people around you, of a proven model, but it takes work. It takes hard work. And I think it's so important, like you said there, Joel, to make sure people understand the fact that you need to be aware of the fact that you're not going to have that income. You need to have that capital investment to protect yourself during those early times. I'm just going to put up a little comment here by Simon, because I think he's talking about what we're talking here. Yes, true, but you can hit the ground running with a franchise resale, existing business, existing revenue. Yeah. What are your thoughts on how buying an existing business can protect an aspiring franchisee, John?
Oh, for sure. If you buy an existing franchise operation that's already in business, you immediately have revenue coming in. But here's the thing, and I was taught this. I took a business brokerage course, just like a one-day thing that I was invited to when I was a franchise broker, and I wanted to learn a little about the business brokerage side. And the instructor was really good, and he said, Joel, the thing is, when you buy an existing business, franchise or not, you need to be a really good FBI agent. You need to have that mentality. You need to find out if the reason given for the business being for sale is the real reason. Is it because, well, my kids, I want to retire, my kids don't want to take it over, that's why I'm selling it? Or is it something that is not really advertised? You have to really be careful. But hey, businesses are being bought and sold every day, and you could do really well. And that revenue coming in from day one is a big positive.
Yeah, it is. That's a great point, Simon. Something that's really important to consider. If you're a new franchisee and you're looking at a new region, a new area, and it's a new business, you need to do your due diligence and try and protect yourself in that way. And, just as you said there, Joel, is exactly the same. If you're buying that existing business, you've still got to do that due diligence. And I like the fact, become an FBI agent.
Yeah.
Does that mean I could potentially be in MI6 here?
Now that
Yes, I don't think I'm doing well at disguising who I am. Although if I take it off and shave my beard, no one knows.
There you go.
So there you go. You never know. Simon has put up a comment, and Penny has. So let's have a look at both of these. Let's go in turn, because Simon's just had one. Let's go Penny first. Ladies first. Penny has put, a prospective franchisee must undertake due diligence on the depth of support they will receive, including the operations manual. Yeah. We don't have FDDs here in the UK. So that due diligence is even more important to make sure you're dealing with a reputable company, speaking to those franchisees. When you've got FDDs there in the US, how important is the sort of the ops manual and looking at that, or is it more focused on talking to other franchisees and that FDD document? Where does that sit protecting people?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to bring up the FDD, and it's a very strange discussions always take place when the FDD is brought up. Here's what I would say about the FDD, and it's actually what my dad taught me. And this is it. The FDD is not the business. It is words and numbers on paper. A lot of would-be franchise owners take the FDD way too seriously. The real magic happens. The real answers happen when you visit franchisees in person, spend the day with them, and when you call them on the phone and ask them what the day in the life is of a franchisee, and if they're happy and if they're making money. I try to simplify it for all my clients, because there is something, this is going to be a little controversial, but there are newer people in franchising who are starting websites, and they come from a finance background, not a franchise background. And everything they do is trying to focus their readers on the numbers. And they're creating products that focus on the numbers. For example, I always tell people, don't compare FDDs. It is a waste of time. I mean, when you think about it, okay, so let's say there's two FDDs from two different franchisors. Both of them have earnings claims. And one of them is, revenue in the third year, franchisees average, $622,500. And the other FDD, 3-year revenue, averages $692,400. Well, if you're only looking at numbers, you're going to be attracted to the one that has a higher revenue, right? Who said that's the best franchise? I don't care about the numbers in that respect. What I care about are the franchisees making money. Are they happy? Are they getting support? And are their expectations being met? Because if the average franchise revenue is $647,000 in year 3, I guarantee your revenue is not going to be that in year 3. It's pretty much universally impossible to have the same exact numbers. Put away the numbers. It's important to look at them. It's important to look at them, but put them aside and talk to the darn franchisees and visit them in person. This isn't rocket science. You don't need graphs. Even if you're a spreadsheet person, the decision is not going to be about numbers. It's going to be gut and emotion. Does it feel right? The numbers can add up as much as they want, but does it feel right? Does it feel right when I visit corporate? Are these people good at selling franchises and bad at support? What am I hearing from the franchisees? I'm adamant about this.
Mm.
FTDs are important to a point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And Simon's made a great point here. And I was going to bring this up because, you were talking there about visiting franchisees, finding out what the day-to-day is like in running that particular franchise opportunity. And, the stories, the characters you meet. I mean, on a Thursday, we do another show called Franchising Brand Stories, 5:15 on Thursdays. And you know what? That is exactly about that. It's about going way beyond those numbers, going beyond the brochures, FDDs if you're in the US, and thinking about those stories and how the founders of those businesses, how they came up with the business, how they overcame challenges, the stories around that, and you start to get a real genuine picture of who you're potentially going into business with. I also, like what you said there. Are they happy? Are they making money? I was lucky enough to talk to Mr. John Hewitt, and he'd been in franchising for many years. And one of the things that he said, the secret to growing a franchise business is very simple: happy, successful franchisees. Getting those happy franchise success, is tricky, but that's the aspiration, I suppose. You want those successful, happy franchisees. We've got a few other points here, so let's get to a few of these, because we've got Bob that's made a couple here. So let's bring up a comment from Bob. So Bob's put, it's just as important on a franchise resale to act like a new franchisee and CTC existing franchisees contained in the FDD. They will know the real reason that franchisee is selling. Yeah, this goes back, doesn't it, to that due diligence. Even if you are getting a resale and you're getting that little bit of potentially quicker income, still very important. Great point there, Bob. Let's have a look at something that Simon's put. Simon's put, as a well-respected franchise commentator says, when investing, use the rule of three. Have 3 times the investment level available in liquid funds to mitigate any cash flow issues. Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in your take on this. I suppose there's not really a exact answer on this, but it is, you made a point there of making sure that franchisors are honest with potential franchisees about this issue of having available funds, not just to run the business, but also their own personal lives. You've got to understand what position they're in. Do they have a mortgage? They've got to pay those bills, and it's really important. I mean, is there a rule of thumb? I mean, what do you think about that sort of 3 times that investment level? Or, would you say that there's a different piece of advice there when you're trying to protect?
Well, I think it's always better to have more than less stashed away. The perfect scenario for the people I've worked with is one spouse is going to step away from his or her job, and the other spouse still works, and they have low debt, and they have enough in their bank account to help them with living expenses, and they write their business plan in a great way that gives them a lot of cushion. So is it 3 times? It could be, absolutely, but more is better than less when it comes to a startup franchise operation. Definitely agree.
Yeah, great point. And I like what you said there about, because often with franchisees, it is a couple, it is 2 people, whether they're in a relationship together as a couple or whether they're just 2 business partners.
Right.
I think that's a really, really interesting way to sort of diversify that risk, as it were. If one part of the partnership is still getting that paycheck, and the other one is investing the time, that's quite a good way of protecting yourself as a franchisee. What great advice. Let's have a look and see whether we've got to let's have a go at something that Bob's put here. Bob's put, most new franchisees will not get a copy of the ops manual until they launch and come to training. A day in the life of is the most important for making a decision to invest, as Joel said. Yeah, I think so. I mean, we sometimes get to a lovely takeaway of one of these episodes, and I think that's one of the takeaways that people can get, if they can truly, by randomly visiting other franchisees, get that picture of what the process was like, what a day is like, what the support is like, and the more you do that, the more of that story you're going to get. And it's not all going to be good stuff. In any franchise, you're going to, there's certainly going to be some challenges. And I don't think that there's any perfect franchisor or franchise model. I don't think it can't exist. Things happen. But it's better to understand that if there is a problem, that you've got people who listen and act on that. Love that, Bob. Thanks very much. Let's have a look here at a comment from Tim. So Tim has put, my observation of the FDD is it's a regulated document designed with good intention to restrict unscrupulous franchisors, which is fine. However, anyone who is good with numbers, accountants and lawyers, will make the numbers work to satisfy the requirement of the FDD. Joel's comment to speak to the franchisees to understand what the real picture is far more relevant than the FDD. Yeah, tis.
Sure.
Tis. Yeah, absolutely. Joel, when I've spoken to you and looking at your profile, you mention your candid approach. I think it's so important to be honest, straightforward, so that people understand what's what. And a candid approach definitely does that. Have you had some stories where perhaps you've come in with that candid approach, and someone has perhaps had the wool pulled over their eyes, and they're seeing things with rose tinted glasses, and you've come in with a straightforward approach, and maybe even the result is them not investing in a franchise and it's not for them. I'm sure that has happened in your career?
More times than you may think. I'd rather talk to someone in a straightforward way who is being unrealistic and tell them to go get a job this time around than have someone invest in a franchise and make it about 7 months and then go out of business, ruin their credit, get their spouse aggravated at them, and hate franchising. So I would much rather, and my approach is straightforward. And as my dad told me, I tend to see things in black and white. I've tried to find a middle ground, but that's why I have no problem calling out franchisors who are just doing business the wrong way, who aren't doing the right things. And I have had conversations. I offer complimentary calls with people before we work together. And I've had conversations, and a lot of them are like, I don't know, Joel, because I'm telling them maybe what they don't want to hear when they expected to hear everything is rosy. And it's just too important. It's too important to use software like to match someone with a franchise. It's too big of a decision. This is a human thing. People are putting a lot of money towards their own business. People who are in what I call career pain, who just don't want the corporate world anymore for whatever reason, and they're looking for an escape hatch. And the escape hatch might not be perfect, but franchising offers a lot. And for the right person who has enough money, it could be the answer. But yeah, I've had many conversations where people have definitely been taken aback, and it's like, hey, what it is what it is. I'm not gonna do this.
Absolutely. I think there's some great points there. I think, understanding someone's, maybe it's a career pain, I like that expression, an escape hatch. I think you've got to understand their why. as well. It's so important in that journey and that story to understand why someone's wanting to do this. You mentioned there about sort of the corporate world, and maybe someone's fed up with that and they want to run their own business. But you got to make sure someone doesn't sort of, leap out of the frying pan into the fire, and that it is that escape hatch, but they understand that it's not going to be, a holiday lying on a beach. It's a lot of hard work, still a lot of risk, but it's perhaps not as lonely as being an entrepreneur and starting your business from scratch. I spoke to somebody about that loneliness of starting a business. You've got nobody to bounce an idea off, nobody to say, is this a good idea, what I'm about to do? And with a franchise, you're buying someone who's already done that and already made lots and lots of mistakes. You're buying that time and hopefully less loneliness in that. Let's have a little look here. We've got a few more comments come up. Bob's put, we use 4 months of operating expenses minimum when opening, including rent, payroll, cost of goods, etc. 4 months above and beyond the expenses to get the doors open. Absolute minimum 4 months expenses. Yeah. I mean, we spoke about this, didn't we? And like you said, Joel, the more the better. But what's really important is to understand the individual circumstances, because that could be different for, 4 months may work very well for one person. It may not be enough, or, it may for somebody else. But this is the great thing about the show. We're trying to inspire that thought process. And if you're a potential franchisee and you're watching this, and you're now at least starting to think about the fact that, okay, I've got to think about what sort of capital I need, not just to invest in this franchise, but to protect me and my family and to protect the business as I grow it and learn it. So it's exactly what we want to do here to inspire that thought. Before we take a few more questions, if you've just joined us, this is the Franchise Show, and this is at the moment a live broadcast. If you're watching it on the 14th of May at 5:47 GMT, and we are talking with the wonderful Joe, and we are talking about protecting aspiring franchisees. So let's have a little look here. I'm going to come to a comment in a minute by Julie as well. So, but let's just quickly look at something that Penny's put. Penny's put, Bob agreed, but they should ask to see a copy. So I think we're talking here about the ops manual. They should ask to see a copy, accepting that they may need to sign an NDA. They should also ask other franchisees how useful it is, how often it's updated if franchisees are involved in its development. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's taking a document like an FDD and turning it into something that's more tangible and more interesting. What's your take on that? Is it similar to your opinion on the FDD?
No, I disagree with Penny.
Oh, you're frozen.
And out there, if I was a franchisor, I wouldn't read much proprietary stuff. You get the information from talking to other franchisees. Is it a good operation manual? Is it a good step-by-step manual? Does the franchisor have it together enough to produce a really good manual? I would never disclose it until someone became a franchisee. That's just me, and that's just business, nothing personal.
Fair enough, but it's definitely an important element to consider in the journey, but maybe it sits a little bit further along that journey. But thanks for your comment there, Penny. Just to quickly recognize the fact that we've got the wonderful Don Cohen here. Don is a great friend of mine, and he's taught me everything that I know about LinkedIn Live and live streaming, and he offers a great service to help people who want to do that. So if you like what I do, then reach out to Don, and he's got a fantastic program that'll help you. And it's wonderful, as ever, to have you here, Don. Let's move on to a comment here from Simon. This is a great one, actually. I like this.
Yeah.
Oh, What do you want a franchisor's mindset to be before you would invest in a franchisee? Great question. What do you think about that one?
I had to read that one like 3 times, which is actually good because it forces me to think a little harder. I want the franchisor to always put franchisees first and their profitability, the importance of that, because profitable franchisees contribute to a system in more ways than just being profitable. The system can grow organically if the franchisees are profitable. And if they're happy and profitable, even more. So I would want a franchisor to focus on franchisee profitability. And the other thing would be on innovation. What kind of products and services are you thinking of offering down the pipeline? And I think that's really, really important.
Oh, that's great. Brilliant point there, Simon. Really like that one. Across all of your years of franchising, you must have met some really interesting characters and have some great stories about people that have, where franchising has perhaps changed their life for the better or perhaps for the worse. But do any stories stick out in your mind of a franchisee that decided to invest over the years?
Yeah, there was a gentleman I worked with who was the president of a company, and he was downsized, and he told me exactly what he wanted. This guy was just so self-aware. So he told me he wanted a franchise opportunity that would allow him to have a space where he could sell, so a retail space, with the ability to get outside of that retail store and sell commercially. And I was like, wow. And I found him something. And he became a multi-unit owner, brought a partner on, and then sold the business a few years later. I think it changed his life, mostly in a good way, because he was able to get what he said he wanted. And that's a rarity. We all have our own mental picture of what we want this perfect business to look like and feel like, and what we want our role to be. So that was an interesting lesson. Was it perfect? No. Did he make a ton of money? I think he did okay, but he finally was his own boss, and it enabled him to do stuff like travel with his wife eventually, because he had people running it. So that's kind of a cool story.
Yeah, I love that. And again, it's about finding that why, isn't it? If you can find out that why, and if you can get what picture is in somebody's head. I mean, I very rarely share a story, but I remember asking somebody how they pictured their life as a franchisee, and their picture was so vivid. They described this coffee shop, and they described the smell of the coffee. They described the sunshine coming in through the window. And they'd had quite a sterile job. I think they were in the medical industry, but their picture of it was part of the why, but they certainly had that picture in their mind, and it was so vivid. It was like if you read a book, if you read a story, where the words suddenly become images in your mind. And this person clearly had that. And I think that's so important when you're talking to somebody and trying to make them successful, to understand that, to see what's going to fit with them. But great. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It's a lovely story of success with challenge, but a story of where someone has found their why. Let's have a look at a comment here from Julie. Lovely to have you here as well, Julie. Julie is definitely going to be a guest here in the future. Julie's put, if a potential franchisee doesn't want to visit existing franchisees, then I'd ask them why. If they can't take the time to do that, then they shouldn't proceed. My question to a potential franchise is, who would you like to visit? The good, the bad, or the ugly, as we all have them, and you can learn a lot from each of them. I love that. What's your thought on that? I mean, visiting potential franchisees is great, and every franchisor has exactly that: the good, the bad, and the ugly. And what's your thoughts on a potential franchisee visiting all of those?
I tell people to create relationships at first when they're on the phone with franchisees, and find a few that are fairly close, not in your same city, but that are fairly close, within a couple-hour drive if possible, and call them and make an appointment and say, I'd like to spend a day with you. You'll be able to decide on your own if it's a good, bad, or ugly franchise operation, just by observing. But it's so important to do that for a day. If you can visit two, even better, but at least one. I've never had anyone I've worked with ever say to me, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to go visit. I feel awkward. People that are serious will do it. Sometimes they suggest it first. But the reason why I say don't visit one in your neighborhood is because, depending on the culture of the franchise system, they may feel awkward, and they may feel like, oh no, another franchisee is moving in. It's going to take some of my money. So start a little further away at first, and visit a franchisee that's a couple hours away if possible.
That's a very, very great point you've made there. And I hadn't even thought of that, about the fact that existing franchisee may feel threatened if you're
a neighbor.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually, a really valid point.
It's not as much of a neutral visit if it's like that.
No,
he or she's going to be very cautious and hold a lot of stuff back. You're not going to get the info.
No, they're going to end up being a bit guarded, aren't they? And it's not going to be
Big time.
That's such a valuable, another nugget and takeaway of today's show, actually. To pick someone. I mean, we can't go too far away in the UK. We run out of land area. Right. Although it takes us a long time to travel.
Yeah, I've heard.
2 hours, it's about 30 miles probably. But what a great point there. And again, we're on this point of still on this point of visiting potential franchisees. Bob's made the point there, visiting franchisees, they're going to get a lot more information financially than item 19. Again, we're going back to an FDD here.
Right.
But that document, it's great, sets a few things out, but you just can't replace those conversations, those stories, understanding the characters. You ask someone what challenges have they had to overcome, and how they've been supported, or tell me that day, what happens day to day, what's been your biggest challenge? All of these questions, especially like you said, Joel, get to know a few of them as well.
Yes.
So they feel comfortable having it. So they trust you as well.
Make some friends.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I've got to bring Don up here, actually, when you just said make some friends, because Don had a very successful tool business in the US. And he always used to say, make a friend before you make a sale. I had to bring Don up because I always loved that expression. And, it's the same in any situation, really. Get to know someone first. I always say that it's a trust journey. And if you get to know someone, you really start to get on well with them. They're going to tell you lots more than if they're guarded and, putting on a front. So, yeah, love that, Bob. Let's have a little look. We are starting to come towards the end today. If you have just joined us for the last 5 minutes, this is the Franchise Show, and we're speaking with Joel Libava, the Franchise King, and we are talking about protecting aspiring franchisees. It's been an amazing conversation so far. You can always catch the replays of these shows. We'll always post those. So, please do that if you're watching in the future. Let's have a very quick look here at something from Simon. Simon's put, when I was doing my due diligence before investing in the franchise, I spoke to franchisees and customers of the franchisees. This is an interesting one. What's your take on taking it to the next level? If it's a business that has, obviously it's going to have a business that has some customers, but if they're accessible, do you agree with that?
Oh, that's great. I like that. And use some of the local review websites and see what the customers are saying about that particular location. anywhere around the country, you can do that.
Yeah.
The customers are saying, I love it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, fantastic point, Simon. And it's so easy, isn't it, to do that? Just have a look at the Google reviews or whatever review platform you go on and just see what people are saying.
Yeah.
Because we've spoken a lot on this show about values and culture, but not just marketing rubbish, but true values and culture. And if it's true in the business, it goes right down from the CEO through the management team, through the franchisor, through the franchisees. And then you get to those happy, successful customers. And it's so important to ask those customers how they're feeling, and really easy to do with the reviews that are online. Look, I think we are now drawing towards a conclusion. It's been such an interesting conversation today. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and as ever, the comments always drive this show. This show is what it is because of the people around us, and by empowering everybody else to have this conversation. And I always love it every week. Before we sort of conclude things and round things off, Joel, I'd just like to give you an opportunity for a minute or two to talk about what it is you do now, the service that you're offering, and the best ways to get in touch with you if somebody would like your help.
I'm just going to keep it real simple. Just go to my website. Everything is there. thefranchiseking.com. www.thefranchiseking.com. You'll see my services, consultations, my books. Everything is on there. And as I said, it's the longest running blog in franchising. So if you want to read articles, they're there. So thanks for having me, though. You take the time now.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that little roundup. And yeah, absolutely. If anybody needs Joel's help, then check him out on LinkedIn and on his website, as he's just said. So we have now come to the end. Just like to do a couple of things before we finish. Next week, Tuesday, the 21st, we are going to have the lovely Tim Morris as a guest. And we're going to be talking about high-performing franchisees and what that means and how you become one of those and everything in between. So hopefully you can join us next Tuesday at 5:15 GMT and 12:15 EST or EDT, wherever we're at on that one at the moment. And also, I'd definitely like to promote our... Oh, hello, what's the dog called?
Bear. That's Bear. Hey, buddy.
Hey, Bear. Hello.
He's such a good boy.
Hello.
Yeah, he's done with it.
Absolutely forward of what I'm saying. He's saying, get on with it.
Yeah, hurry up.
But I'd like to also introduce and remind people of our sister show on a Thursday. Oh, he's interested. He's interested in franchising brand stories. And that is starting season 2. Not this week, but next Thursday. And we are going to be announcing all of the details of that. That is on a Thursday, 5:15 GMT and 12:15 EST. So until next time, I'd like to once again thank you, Joel, for your time and the wonderful conversation. And I'd love to thank everybody who's been here as usual today. You're all wonderful. Have an amazing week in franchising, and I will see you next time. Take good care. Cheers.